Hey mini enthusiasts, how are you doing? Welcome back. It's part 18 of the Project Kit build and it's spray day. So this is quite a milestone. It's the first point we get some paint on the car. Starting with the underneath of the car because quite honestly the paint finish doesn't have to be perfect. So it's a good bit of practice to get the spray gun all dialed in, get used to mixing up the paint and get everything perfect before you move on to doing the bodywork. So just firstly some prep work. As always with any paint work, the prep work is really boring. So here, even though it's stone chipped underneath and we're not that particular about the finish, you still have to go round and key the stone chip just so the new paint will adhere to it nicely. So we're just using Scotch-Brite pads, which are like almost like Brillo pads you'd use for cleaning the dishes, but they just roughen up the surface nicely and give a nice key for the new paint to go onto. Obviously it does leave a little bit of dust behind, so Mark's just going around now just with an airline blowing away the dust. And Mark's just saying to the camera there he's using a tack rag. So a tack rag just goes along, it's like a lint-free cloth, just takes off any fine dust particles. It's generally more used or more important on the actual bodywork of the car. But yeah, even underneath, it just cleans it off, makes sure it's grease-free, and it prepares the area you're going to paint nicely just for the base coat.
To keep the dust levels down. You won't see me.
Apologies, couldn't put Mark speaking on just because there was background music there, but yeah, Mark was just explaining it's not very often you'll see him with a hoover in his hand, but obviously he's just going around hoovering up the workshop just to try and cut down the dust before he starts spraying. We're just looking over here. This is just a stone chip. Now it's been Scotch-Brited down and just wiped over with a tack rag, ready for paint. So as you can see, the finish is dull. That's how it should be. So even if you're spraying on top of primer, if you've got a shiny finish, that's bad news really. It should always be dull. You should always have something for the base coat to key to. So we're just moving on to mixing up the paint here, and it's 2K paint, so it's a 2K base, and the mix here is 2 parts base coat, 1 part hardener and 10% thinners. All the paint for the underside, I think we used a litre of paint, is all mixed up in one go. That's just to make sure you get the consistency in the paint. If it's all from one batch and you spray it out of sort of one mix, you shouldn't have any problems. So it takes about 3 hours to go off, so as long as you're painting within 3/8, it shouldn't be too much of an issue. And I don't show it in the video here, but it's really important actually. Before that paint goes into the gun, it goes through a fine paint strainer just to make sure you don't get any dirt, crap and bits and bobs in the paint. So if you just want a detailed explanation, there's a process we used for painting the underside of the car, and it'll be the same for the top of the car as well. So like I say, the paint strainer is really important, especially when the paint pots start getting a bit old and you get a bit of dry, flaky paint in there when you're popping the lid off and that sort of thing. It only takes a very, very small particle to get caught up in the spray gun, and then it starts to splatter, and then you get runs and things like that. So the paint's being sprayed at 50 to 60 psi. It almost looks like it's a little bit too much, and it might be, but Mark spoke to a professional sprayer. That's what he recommended. And the first coat going on now is really just what you would call a grip coat. So it's probably about half the amount you put on of the normal coats. Very quickly, just once over, and it's just to give the next coat, the wet coat, something to adhere to. So when the grip coat goes on, you literally only leave it for about 5 minutes until it starts to go tacky, and then you go on with the wet coat. And then there's 3 additional wet coats with about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the temperature of where you're spraying. About 10 to 15 minutes between each coat. So between each coat, the paint shouldn't have fully cured. It should just be sort of just beyond tacky, really. So just kind of touch dry but not sticky. So as you can see, we've got an extractor where Mark's painting, but because we're spraying black, it really, visibility becomes a problem. Luckily, obviously Mark's got the little workshop on the side, so you're only out there spraying for sort of 5-10 minutes and then run back in the little workshop. So yeah, there's three coats of base coat going on, and then it's pretty much the same process for the lacquer. So you leave it about 30 minutes after the base coat, just so that allows it to cure again, so it's touch dry, so it's not fully dry. The lacquer needs to adhere to the base coat beneath it, so you don't want to leave it overnight or anything like that. Just about 30 minutes, and then the lacquer goes on. Same process, a quick grip coat, which is about half the amount you'd usually spray, and then 2 wet coats. Then once a final layer of lacquer's on, that gets left overnight, and if you was in an oven you'd bake it, but Mark's workshop has underfloor heating throughout, so Mark just turns the heating right up on that 30 degrees, leaves it overnight, and it's nice and fully cured in the morning. So the rotisserie really comes into its own here, because you'd really struggle to spray the underside of a car, but obviously having the rotisserie there allows us to sort of roll it round, get in all the areas, make sure there's no bits that are missed. So I think I've mentioned in previous episodes, actually, Mark's the expert at spraying, or he's certainly far better than I am, so I kind of leave him to it. And he's not, I think he's only sprayed Bolt before Mark, but he takes a keen interest in paint spraying, does his research, makes sure he gets all the mixes right and that sort of thing. And I think paint spraying, there's lots of people who will have lots of different opinions. Luckily, I think Mark's uncle is a professional paint sprayer, so he does get some good advice on how to paint. And if the finish is as good as Bolt, I'm sure he'll be very happy with that. So there we go, all done. It's a very glossy finish for the underside of a car. Obviously you can see the texture, that is a stone chip in the paint, and it just really protects it. So it'll be a bit of a show car kit. So although the black looks pretty plain at the moment, when those candy red subframes go on there and we start bolting the bits on, that really is going to look fantastic. And I think the red against the black's going to look really cool. So that's it, quick one today. Thanks for watching. We've got some footage, more footage ready to edit, so be another video up in a few days. Thanks guys, cheers, bye.